But we should be able to allow and leave place for fiction and know where fiction ordinarily should stay and know where ourselves ordinarily should stay. We should know where to place Nollywood and we should know how to leave them there and not bring them closer to what ordinarily they shouldn't be brought to. We should know these differences and know how we ordinarily want to go about this. These are many ways of the ways we better our own life. These are many ways of the ways we ordinarily should go. Outside of this, our freedom is not guaranteed. African countries, they can't set their own economic policies without IMF and the World Bank interference. This thanks to the numerous loans and the numerous borrowing that have been the situation of the continent for many years. And so you find people hanging on there and telling themselves, what thing I go do? I know if you do anything now. What thing I won't do? Make them go kill me. Make them go kill my children. You find these leaders tell themselves in situations like this that what can they do? They hang on there because they are owing debt. As such, the continent continues to go the way the continent continues to go. Who gets the benefit? And who ordinarily is lacking from this particular stuff? The ability to make independent decision beyond external constraint is a thing that a whole lot of persons have looked at. The likes of Jim Paul Sartre gets to argue that, humans are conditioned or condemned rather to be free. But in and about that statement of human beings condemned to be free lays the substrate upon which every other thing gets to stand. To what extent are we free? To what extent aren't we free? To what extent can we make independent judgment without ordinarily getting constrained from one way or the other, from this person or that person? What are the ways in which we can better our lives? What are the ways in which we can grow tall, grow better, stand strong, stand as humans without the constraints of external factors? Are we necessarily determined? Are we free to an extent? Are we free to particular realms? What are the ways in which we can assert our own free will? On the surface level, it looks very, very plausible that ordinarily everything seems to be fine. Everything seems to be okay. Everything seems to be working well, nice, good for you, for me, for everybody. But digging a little bit deep, scratching beyond the surface, you come to meet the many underpinnings that ordinarily make for our thought process, many things that ordinarily get to lead us to do the many things we get to do. So you listen to neuroscientists and biologists, the likes of Robert Sapolsky in his book Determine, in his book Behave, and you get to see how ordinarily things are done. You get to see him look into the idea of free will, and you ask yourself, what really is the case with me? What really is the situation with me? The likes of Nietzsche will get to tell us that, power structures get to ordinarily shape choices. And it is to this particular realm we want to base our conversation in and about. The whole idea of we coming to tell ourselves that we don't have it all. We don't have everything it takes to ordinarily do everything we want to do by ourselves. We don't have all it takes to go on with life the way we want to go on with life without the different conversations, the different means of coming to understand ourselves and understand the situation of things around us. And why do I say so? I say so for a whole lot of reasons. Is there free will in Nigeria? Is there free will in Africa? And free will, remember, broadly used here, even when we narrow it down to the most basic point of free will. What are the political constraints that we find ourselves in? Are elections rigged? Of course, elections are often rigged, meaning people's, votes may not matter at all. They don't even get to count. What about leaders? Are leaders imposed on us? Are they oppressive to laws? To what level do they ordinarily allow themselves to be voted by the people? So you get to hear godfathers get to talk about, I put this person in office, I put that person in office, I put the other person in office. But then you get to see that things are not really done freely. So that the economy gets destabilized, so that people's life get to be scattered, shattered, battered, made to be looked at from different perspective, and we become so constrained in our judgment and in our ways of ordinarily thinking, to the point of telling ourselves that anything can happen and we all are fine with such decisions, in as much as it doesn't really get to concern us really, or we've just failed to think about it to the extent in which we ordinarily should be able to think about this type of stuff. And then in the long run, you get to hear agitations for military coups to get to happen in the Sahel region, overriding democracies that ordinarily aren't democratic to even start with. What about economic limitations? I think like poverty. It reduces, real choices. For many persons, many persons would ordinarily want to do a couple of things, but the freedom they get to ordinarily suffer from not having the chance to really choose the things they really want to do in their life, leaves them limited, leaves them hanging, leaves them angry, leave them scattered, shattered, battered. Look at a young Nigerian. He may want to study, let's say, a thing like philosophy, but is forced to learn coding for financial reasons. He might want to study sociology for the love of it, but then he ends up doing something else because he needs to keep himself going. Was the person really given the choice? Or did the person choose freely? What about the whole idea of Jackpa? The whole Jackpa syndrome, the whole idea of mass emigration that is going on in the continent. Isn't that a constraint to the concept of free will? Are people really free? Are people really choosing freely to do these things, or are they, doing this stuff out of economic necessities? Students that get to go out of their way to get to travel and do different things. To what extent can we really say freedom is being upheld here, that people are ordinarily acting out of the necessity of how their life ordinarily should go and how things ordinarily should play out? And then you get to hear the whole idea of, destiny and, divine control over life. Before I was born, there was a particular thing I was meant to do, and that thing alone. And apart from that particular thing, I cannot do any other thing. If I try to do any other thing, then I ordinarily am risking how life should be and how life shouldn't be. But what we fail to understand is that there's no one way to ordinarily live life. And upon the belief that, life should be directed and controlled from a particular perspective, we run the risk of saying the way we ordinarily are at the moment is born out of destiny, is born out of the ways in which we ordinarily are supposed to do things. And then you now fall to that temptation of asking, does God know that the girl raped would be raped? And if he does know that that girl raped would be raped, what did he do? Or is he like Augustine, getting to tell us that, God can churn out better things out of evil situations? I am here to know. I am here to answer that question. I am here to get a clear-cut answer as it concerns what ordinarily should be done in and about that particular situation. So that you find many persons becoming very, very superstitious. Superstitions get to wallow and take a whole lot of stuff. It is God's will almost every time we get to hear. For even things we ordinarily can lay claims of for ourselves, for the very decisions we ordinarily can take in and about of our own life by ourselves, we lay them down upon superstitious and traditional beliefs. It shapes our sense of decision making. We consult prophets before we take major life decisions. We consult different DBS. We go and do different things to ordinarily come to make sense of our life and our existence down here. And in and about all of this, do we really still consider ourselves to be free? And then you look on the other angle, you're looking at family pressure, you're looking at societal pressures, expectations, the careers in which people want us to ordinarily do, the whole idea of marriage, the whole idea of, how to live one's life. You look at the economy of the country, you begin to look at careers ordinarily that will not benefit you now into the future, as opposed to ordinarily looking at your life and looking at the ways in which you ordinarily should lead your life and lead your life very well. You find yourself constrained to a particular way of reasoning, to a particular way of thinking, in and about of a particular problem, and that problem being the problem that you aren't really free. You are not free to the extent in which you get to see yourself and you see how life ordinarily plays. Life plays you. Women particularly, get to face limited choices due to cultural norms in our societies. A woman may want to, remain single but faces pressure to marry by 30. Maybe she wants to build herself a little bit more. Maybe she wants to go on her life a little bit more. But then she can't, because she's stuck, and she's stuck in a particular place that ordinarily doesn't help matters. And so she finds herself hanging on to a particular situation that ordinarily will not benefit her. But then she's made to understand that she should ordinarily get married first. What about the different nations within our continent that, still function under structures imposed by colonial powers? Do you consider such a country free? Do you consider such a country that making use of its free will as a collective here? The global economic factors get to favor Western nations. It limits the autonomy of African nations, and you cannot just continually shout that you want the continent to be free. You have to study the trends, you have to study the events and how they ordinarily happen and how they ordinarily should be guided. African countries, they can't set their own economic policies without IMF and the World Bank interference. This thanks to the numerous loans and the numerous borrowing that have been the situation of the continent for many years. And so you find people hanging on there and telling themselves, what thing I go do? I know if you do anything now, what thing I won't do? Make them go kill me, make them go kill my children. You find these leaders tell themselves in situations like this that what can they do? They hang on there because they are owing debt. As such, the continent continues to go the way the continent continues to go. Who gets to benefit? And who ordinarily is lacking from this particular stuff? Political elites. They keep people dependent, and they keep them in control, and they keep them in cages, and they keep them in these places, and they control their minds, and they control their ways of thinking, and they control the way ordinarily they get to do things. Keeping these people here, it reduces the chance of resistance. When you leave them hungry, how would they even be able to fight? I was having a conversation with a friend today, and a friend and a colleague, and he said, to find food chop now for Nigeria na by connection. That's to eat in Nigeria now is by connection. And you think that is a joke. It's no joke. There's no fluke in that statement. It's as real and as strong and as firm as anything you want to think about. To find food now for Nigeria na by connection. And the problems are real. The problems are existentially concerning. The problems are existentially daring. The problems are existentially steeped into our system. And our religious leaders continue to maintain control by promoting, the whole idea of destiny and submission. Listen to religious leaders as it concerns the yearnings of your soul and spiritual guidance. But when it comes to submitting to things ordinarily you shouldn't submit, you should be able to know when to back out. You cannot tell me that the whole idea of destiny and the whole idea of submission should just be swallowed line, hook, and sinker simply because of what? You are Nigerian? No. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't go like that. Things don't get to happen that way. Things don't get to happen that way. Things don't get to happen that way. We must grow out of these problems. There should be a space for the spiritual, there should be a space for the divine, and there should be room for the physical. Everything cannot be tied and brought down upon the realms and the realms of spirituality. Things many persons would not verify. Things many persons can't even verify. Things many proponents of such ways of thinking can't even verify. We cannot verify everything at the moment, but the things that can be verified should be verified. The things that should be questioned should be questioned. A thing like destiny and submission to abject poverty and abject sorrow is a thing that shouldn't be given the attention it is getting at the moment. It shouldn't go anywhere. It shouldn't be championed. It shouldn't be championed. Not today, not tomorrow. Never, 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 never should we allow ourselves to be ruled by men and women who don't know ordinarily what to do. In their life and in the lives of as many persons they get to lay control over. Foreign powers have to be checkmated. Foreign powers have to be studied. Those doing African studies who are from African descent should know what they are doing down there. Economics, the economy of the country and the continent ordinarily should be studied. Our economies shouldn't just sit down there and, flatter themselves by the many things they get to tell themselves. Life is bigger than ordinarily what we ordinarily want to believe life to be. Our sons and daughters must be encouraged to study the things that ordinarily can get the continent out of economic hardship. And these things are not rocket science. These things are models already developed and models already kept in other places. You just have to take it and replicate in a particular region. You just have to take it and then get to see to it that it ordinarily works for you. It ordinarily works for your life. It ordinarily works for my own life. It ordinarily works for the environment we find ourselves. As opposed to just keeping quiet and sitting down and keeping calm and holding ourselves to our own sense of superstitious ways of thinking. Foreign powers cannot continually exploit the continent, but it starts with you, it starts with me, it starts with all of us, it starts with how we ordinarily come to see things and how we ordinarily come to understand life and how we ordinarily come to understand the different ways and the different levels upon which our life at the moment is hinged on. And so I ask again, can free will exist in Nigeria and Africa? Yes, when we create wealth. Wealth increases options and autonomy. When we are able to feed ourselves and when we are able to allow education ordinarily grant us a chance for critical thinking, because knowledge gets to allow us to make informed choices. And then you get to look at political freedom. You get to look at economic freedom on the other hand. Transparent government, the whole idea of enhancing conversations among people, individual liberty and the whole conversations about this. There are many ways we ordinarily can break free from the jinx that ordinarily hold us down. Breaking cultural dogmas also is a thing we need to know and a thing we need to accept. We mustn't go back completely to the ways of our ancestors. We need to make progress as we progress in life and as we move further and as we move on and on. Standing one place and standing still and claiming that we are going back to our root is not going to help us. We need to incorporate the modern world in our ways of getting to do things. Many a times we talk about Japan, many a times we talk about India, many a times we talk about these Asian countries and we tell ourselves that they have maintained their culture, they have maintained their various things. But they have changed also in many things. They have changed also in many things. They are advancing, they are tying themselves and attaching themselves to the ways in which the modern world gets to present them. But how are you going to do that when you don't have cultural custodians and philosophers and psychologists and theologians who ordinarily dabble and debate conversations about what ordinarily should be and what shouldn't be? What do you want to tell me? That at the moment, life should just continue the way life is continuing? That there's nothing to be changed? That we just have to stay stuck to this particular situation? Of course, no. Our lives can be better. Our lives can be brighter. Our lives can be stronger. Our lives can be deeper. Our sense of understanding can be much more better than we ordinarily have it now. But you have to tell yourself what type of life you want to see and what type of life you ordinarily want to come to be governed by and governed with. In and about these are the ways we ordinarily should look at our life now into the future. We must break out of our problems by ourselves. And we ordinarily must come to recognize that we have a role to play. It is not a thing born only out, it is not a thing born from a group of persons only for them to do for us. No. It is a life born out of our own desire to see to it that we change and we change for good. Our lives can make sense, our lives can be better if we want our lives to be better. So sit down and ask yourself, as a Nigerian, as an African, do I really have free will? We're not even negotiating and debating the whole idea of the existential and ontological angle of it. We are still looking at the bare minimum. We are still looking at the very beginning of things. The idea that, a thing like the basic things that ordinarily make life possible can be reached, can be kept by us, can be reached, can be kept by us. Not the constant dependence on people, not the constant dependence on things and the constant dependence on other factors that ordinarily shouldn't be considered when negotiating our own case. But you see us go this way over and over and over again, and you begin to ask yourself, what ordinarily constitutes our life? What ordinarily constitute the ways in which we get to live life and the ways in which we get to do things? And how must we go? How should we go? These are questions we are not asking ourselves. The school you are attending, the course you are reading, is it something you really wanted to do or you needed to survive? The money you are chasing that your parents never even chased half, but led lives better than the ones you are living now, is it your own decision or the decision of the place you find yourself? What is the role of the political leaders in coming to make those decisions, and how are you contributing to such? What is the role of your religion? What is the role of your belief? What is the role of your activity and your inactivity to see to it that the things that ordinarily get to happen, and the things that shouldn't happen, as opposed to the current situation of things where anything can happen and anything can go? Tell me, what should we do as a people? Tell me, how should we go from here? Should we continually stay where we are and resist the urge to move forward? Or should we hang on here? Things are changing. The gods ordinarily changed how they ordinarily did things. If you read Chimamanda's The Stubborn Historian, in the collection of essays, the thing around your neck, you get to see the whole idea of, before the advent of the white men, the gods drank palm wine. But when the white men came, the gods had to, augment and then upgrade and update their standards. And they now started drinking schnapps and dry gin. And now things have changed, from cars to cows to the different things we ordinarily at the moment have come to see in our own lives. If the gods can grow and if the gods can change, who are we? Who are we that we cannot change? Who are we that we shouldn't change? How can we just continually want to live life the way we want to live life, and we want all the change and all the happiness in the world to ordinarily get to happen? It doesn't work that way. Of course not. Of course not. It doesn't work that way. Our lives can be better. I keep saying this because I know for sure. I know what education can do. I know what science can do. I know what critical thinking can do. I know what religion can do. I know what politics can do. I know what good governance can do. I know what all the peace we so dream of look like if we but put our heads together and tell ourselves, our children must not all be doctors and nurses and engineers and lawyers. They can also be artists. They can also be painters. They can also be psychologists. They can also be philosophers. They can also be sociologists. They can also be historians. They can be in and about all of these things while maintaining the current pace at which things ordinarily are for them, as opposed to allowing themselves die and die slowly. There are lots of opportunities out there for them, for you, for all of us. But we're still in our shell, we are so scared of taking responsibility. We are leaving everything to destiny. We are leaving everything to chance. We are leaving everything to superstition and telling ourselves that, things have already been orchestrated before now and things have already been championed and planned, and all the things we are just doing nice but fulfilling our fate. Rome was there. Fatum. The Roman Empire believed in that for a very long time. But what I can tell you for free is that at the moment, the destiny of our own country is in our hands. Just like in the Merlin, destiny of a great kingdom lies in the shoulder of a young boy. But we should be able to allow and leave place for fiction and know where fiction ordinarily should stay and know where ourselves ordinarily should stay. We should know where to place Nollywood and we should know how to leave them there and not bring them closer to what ordinarily they shouldn't be brought to. We should know these differences and know how we ordinarily want to go about this. These are many ways of the ways we better our own life. These are many ways of the ways we ordinarily should go. Outside of this, our freedom is not guaranteed. Outside of this, we will continue to live in lawlessness and we continue to confuse ourselves and continue to go the way we go. And it will not help you, it will not help me, it will not help anybody. And I hope you come to understand these truths and you come to accept them for what they are now into the future. I am Biringkpa bin Mecca. I am your brother, the mendicant, strolling this world with you. See you next time. Please do share this video with your mother, share this video with your father, your brothers and sisters, your colleagues at work, your classmates, your enemies, if you have any, your countrymen and countrywomen and people from the same continent, as well as those from other places. See you next time.